This region is extremely hard to get into. It's got a reputation for being somewhat lawless. So you can see the pure scale of this refugee camp. And remember, this is just a small portion. There's over 1 million Syrian refugees in this country. This landscape is so brutal. You know, the temperature is 48 degrees Celsius in summer, -10 or colder in winter. It's quite hard to look at this place, honestly speaking, in any other way than hell on earth. There's military lookout posts on top of all the hills around me. Shukran.
Welcome.
So we're gonna go into one of the Syrian refugee camps behind me.
Since the end of last year, Lebanon has been paralyzed by a political and economic crisis.
The people of this country are no strangers to destruction.
Welcome back to Beirut, Lebanon, the site of the recent explosion which left 300,000 homeless. Today we are driving about 3 to 4 hours right into the top corner northeast pocket of Lebanon, right next to the Syrian border. We're going to see some pretty interesting landscapes and people along the way. So we're going to meet some locals, see some Syrian refugees around the border area, maybe meet some of them and see what story they have to tell. It's going to be a pretty heavy day, I think. So let's jump in the car, drive through the beautiful Lebanese countryside and see what beautiful people we can meet today. So we've been driving for 2 hours or so through the mountains. You can see some pretty stunning views here. A bit more barren landscape, quite dry and hot. This city we're in is called Baalbek, and it has quite the reputation. It's got a reputation for being somewhat lawless. There's quite a sizable hashish industry here. There's big family operations here. So these big families back and forth in Baalbek here and in the surrounding villages more or less have control of this region. And I've been told that, like we were in Tripoli the other day, and when they were celebrating, they were firing off you know, machine guns. Apparently here they're firing off even bigger weapons when they celebrate. For example, bazookas, etc., along those lines. So it's apparently even more extreme in that sense. So just come down the road a little bit from where I filmed that last piece, because in the background here is actually the highest point of Lebanon. I think 2,400 meters. Mountain over there. This is a Syrian refugee camp behind me. I just want to emphasize, I was saying before that this area is a bit lawless, but like many parts of Lebanon, relatively speaking, it is somewhat safe to some degree. That's not me telling you to come here, that's me telling, if you are considering it, do your own research, take your own risks. I'm not condemning nor condoning. Lebanon, in my mind, apart from the other day when we were in Tripoli, when people were firing weapons in the air, more or less you are quite safe in this country, relatively speaking, considering other parts of the region. Okay, so we've driven further up the valley and we've actually come up to a mountaintop where this village area is called Arsel. So you can just see there's so many refugee camps. This city here has 35,000 residents, but they have 65,000 Syrian refugees from the war. This area here actually had one of the main bases of ISIS during the war. So 2014, 2015, this city had a huge battle. Just to get into this region, we had to go through a strict checkpoint, and we had pre-approved permits and everything. You can't just turn up here and drive in. This is a very controlled region for security reasons. So we're going to go into one of the Syrian refugee camps behind me, meet some people, hear their story, and see how life is up here in a place where resources are extremely limited. So temperatures here in summer get up to 48 degrees Celsius, and in winter minus 10 degrees. So you just can't really begin to grasp the extremities of the weather. Salam alaikum.
ما شاء الله ما شاء الله
MashaAllah.
الله خلينا اياكم اصورنا كم صورة.
What's your name?
انا اسمي بهاء.
Say one more time.
Huh?
Your name?
Your name بهاء.
Pehe.
بهاء.
Pehe. Pehe. Nick.
انت اسمك نيك؟
Nick.
نيك. لك الله يخلينا نيككم هيك.
MashaAllah.
لك الله يخلينا اياكم.
So as you can see there, I was approached by this young man, Baha. He's 13 years old, but he's a very confident boy, and he was just telling us the needs that he has here, living in the camps. So Baha, you live in the camp behind you here?
لا أنا ساكن
So he lives in the camps, but not in particular this camp. He's got his sister living here. His camp is behind the hills.
Is it a good living condition?
مبسوطين نسا ما قلنا
His father passed away, and he's the only one working. He's working at a local mechanic here to try to provide some support to himself and his mother and his brothers and sisters, because they've got shortage in food, in heating materials.
Do you mind asking how his father passed?
كانت عمري 13 وقت ما.
Oh, actually, he doesn't know his father at all. He passed away while he was only 3 months old.
Shukran.
ايه شكرتاي.
So we've come down the hill into this refugee camp, and we're going to go and see how the people live here and what they eat and things like that. But you can see a 13-year-old boy approached us offering us coffee and tea, had the mannerisms of a full-blown man, very polite, been through so much struggle that it's just really hardened him. It's very humbling to see a 13-year-old boy working as a mechanic full-time in these harsh environments, sleeping in these conditions. These are the kind of conditions that the people living here are facing on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you.
Thank you. F1.
بستثمر المخيم هون.
Shukran.
Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so we've come into one of the houses of the camps, and we've been invited to this lovely lady's house, Fatim. Badia is going to be translating again for me, my main man here in Lebanon. Badia, would you mind asking how long Fatim has lived in this house?
She's been here since 2013. She came here with her 4 children.
What was the reason for Fatim to come?
Her husband died because of the conflict. They ran from the house herself with her young children for their own safety, because their house was bombarded on top of their heads, and she lost her husband there after bombing and after strikes. She went to seek refugee and safety for her own family.
What was the journey like coming here from Syria? Was it on foot?
It was quite a risky, dangerous journey. They ran out only with the clothes that they were wearing. Her eldest son was 9 years old back then, and the youngest was 2 years old only. And they crossed the mountains walking. It took them like 48 hours walking and hiding from all types of sniping and bombing. One of her relatives got injured by one of the bombs, and it was really frustrating, tiring, risky journey until they crossed into the Lebanese border. They felt a little bit safety, and then they came into this area.
Is there any chance of going back to Syria?
First of all, the number one condition for her to go back is security, the security for her children. Till the moment she said there's no security. Her house is on the ground, so there's nowhere to go to.
How do you get by in these circumstances? What do you do for food, clean water?
She's trying to be very economical. One thing she's lucky for now, that she's still got the UN vouchers that has cash money. It's little, but it's keeping her running a day, and donations that are coming from the NGOs, bread or food or whatever is available. Basically, we're talking about 100% donations.
Okay, shukran.
شكرا.
Merci. Merci. Shukran. So you can see behind me here the bread distribution project by Human Appeal. So people from all over the camps here come down, get their bread. There's even a feedback box here in case the families have any criticism that they would like to give to Human Appeal to change how they do things. So it's a very open system, and it's really inclusive of the people. It's not just give them some bread and then, you know, off with them. They want it to be as smooth and inclusive as possible. Okay, so we've met a young man called Maharab. He's just picked up his bread. Maharab, what do you have in your hands?
خبز.
And this is for your family?
إيه.
How old are you?
عمري 7.
7. Do you like the bread? Is it tasty?
إيه.
Does it fill up your belly?
إيه.
Yeah?
يلا فوتوا.
تفضل يا خالتي.
Assalamu alaikum.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Fatima, how important is this bread to you and your family?
هذا غذائنا يا ابني.
This is our daily driver. This is our daily meal. This is how we live.
And without the bread, what would you do for food?
والله ما بناكل شيء. الحمد لله.
This is our essential food, and we heavily rely on bread. And if there's nothing, I try to do something else like lentils, but because of the inflation, things are crazy expensive. She can't afford buying these stuff. So whatever is available, they just pass by. They just need to fill their tummies.
Have there been times when you weren't able to fill your stomach?
والله بركت علينا أيام ما في أكل.
Yeah, there has been really difficult time, and they didn't eat. They just didn't eat. They couldn't afford. She couldn't afford to buy a loaf of bread.
You have children or just grandchildren? You have other family in the camp?
أنا وولاد ابني أيتام.
She's here with her husband, but her husband is extremely ill. These 3 orphans for her son who passed away.
أخوي 200 وأخته 200,000.
مشان تسجليهم؟
إيه.
بيصرف
أول.
أول اثنيناتهم. She's really concerned about the future of her grandchildren, and why she's becoming emotional because she cannot afford to register them to school here because of lack of money, of course. She's really worried about their future, and she really wants them to go to school, like at least they'll have a future.
Okay. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you for your time.
شكرا.
Shukran. Bye. Bye. So you can see there the pure emotion of what Fatima and her poor family have faced. It's very hard times for the family there. So you can see the kids eating the bread there, getting straight into it. As soon as they get it, they rip open the packet and start eating. So just in this region alone, there's 65,000 Syrian refugees. In the whole of Lebanon, there's over 1 million Syrian refugees still left over from the war. So you can just understand the pure scale of the situation here. And so just $10 will supply a family of 4 with bread for a week. So you can just understand how far the money goes here with the inflation and the collapse of the banking system here in Lebanon. And then you've got COVID. You can just imagine how everything compounds. So $10 goes a really long way here. You're supplying a family like Fatima's there. You know, she's emotionally distraught. She has no idea what the future holds for her grandchildren. It's quite hard to witness. Any help that you can give goes a very long way. If you're in a hard position, I understand it's a very hard situation globally right now. But if you do have the change and you want to help out here, families like Fatima's family there will be eternally grateful to you. So you can see the pure scale of this refugee camp. And remember, this is just a small portion of what is in Lebanon. There's over 1 million Syrian refugees in this country. This landscape is so brutal. It's so arid and barren. You know, the temperature is 48 degrees Celsius in summer, -10 or colder in winter. It's quite hard to look at this place, honestly speaking, in any other way than hell on earth. You can imagine if people are willing to come here with their children, trek for 48 hours over mountains, avoiding military, hiding in the dark, to live here. It just goes to show how brutal of an environment that these people fled. You know, houses that they'd lived in for their families had lived in for generations. To just leave that all behind. That shows how imminent the threat was for them then. Many obviously weren't so lucky.
Essentially barrels filled with high explosives and other materials such as scrap metal. 5 months later, another bombing captured on film.
An entire city has become a no man's land. There's no life, no people. For years, IS terrorized and controlled these streets.
So during the war, only about 5 years ago, this entire valley behind me, there were many members of ISIS living here. Like I said before, one of their bases was here. This ultimately led to Hezbollah and the Lebanese army fighting, and ISIS retreated back. This region is extremely hard to get into. It's only because working with the NGOs that we're able to gain access into this place, and even then it's not guaranteed. There's military lookout posts on top of all the hills around me. I'm kind of in a gully here just to stay out of the, you know, their way. I don't want to set off any security alarms with them. The Syrian refugee crisis has been somewhat forgotten by the world. You know, mainstream media is not covering it anymore. It seems like old news, but you can see behind me, these people, some of these people have been here, you know, a decade, and it doesn't look like they're getting home anytime soon. You heard Fatima say she doesn't have a house to go home to. Imagine you're in your own home country, in your hometown. One day you're just chilling, watching Netflix, hanging out, and then all of a sudden you hear bombs, you hear blasts. They start to get closer and closer, and then sooner or later one of them hits your house. You lose your husband, and then ultimately you have to run away from your destroyed house, flee to another country, over mountains, 48 hours hiking in the dark with your children. It's impossible to be able to relate to these people and the pain that they're experiencing. Okay, so it's the following day. I was gonna finish the video at the camps there. We got home quite late last night to the hotel. It was like a 15-hour day. It was quite intense, you know, emotionally and physically. Last night we drove back through Baalbek. It's quite interesting because if you remember where I was next to the ruined cars, the kind of scrap car yard, I was talking about how that region is somewhat lawless, and it's known for people firing bazookas and RPGs in the air and everything. Well, I just want to read you an article that came out yesterday. Gunfire RPGs as Baalbek personal dispute escalates. A personal dispute in a Baalbek neighborhood escalated into gunfire, including the firing of rocket-propelled grenades. The clash was between members of the same clan, caused material damage. Parts of a shoulder-fired missile, meanwhile, landed near a journalistic crew in the vicinity of the Baalbek ruins, damaging a parked car in the area. Such clashes are frequent in the Baalbek district, especially in this neighborhood. So we actually got news of this last night when we were driving back. It happened, I'm not exaggerating when I say half an hour after we were through that district. So when I was saying, you know, at the start of the day, when it was quite lawless and things are known to pop off. I wasn't exaggerating. You can see that region is quite on the edge there. So I just wanted to share that with you to kind of show the situation here. And like I was saying, it is like somewhat safe in many areas, but there is the chance of gunfire in many areas as well. So thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you on the next one. In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.